Billionaire CEO's secret affair with his pregnant ex-wife threatens his marriage, but he's still in love with her. Nathan, I'm pregnant, Elena whispered, her hands trembling as she held the positive pregnancy test between them in the dimly lit hotel room where they'd been meeting in secret for 6 months. Nathan Cross, billionaire CEO worth $2.8 billion, felt his world tilt on its axis as he stared at the 2 pink lines that would destroy everything he'd built. Pregnant? Elena, are you sure? I've taken 4 tests, Elena said, tears streaming down her face as she looked at the man she'd never stopped loving despite their bitter divorce 3 years earlier. Nathan, I'm carrying your child, and Charlotte doesn't know about us. Jesus, Nathan ran his hands through his dark hair, pacing the hotel room like a caged animal. Elena, Charlotte and I have been trying to have a baby for 2 years. The irony is killing me. The irony? Elena's voice rose with hurt and anger. Nathan, this isn't some cosmic joke. This is our child, conceived because we can't stay away from each other despite the fact that you're married to someone else. I know what this is, Nathan said, his voice breaking as he stopped pacing to look at her. This is the universe punishing me for choosing money over love, for marrying Charlotte when I never stopped loving you. Then choose differently this time, Elena pleaded, reaching for his hands. Nathan, we have a chance to be a real family again. Our child deserves to have both parents, not to be born from a secret affair. Nathan stared into Elena's dark eyes, the same eyes that had captivated him in college, the same woman he'd lost because he'd been too proud and ambitious to choose love over success. Elena, if I leave Charlotte, I lose everything. The prenup, her family's business connections, my entire empire. And if you stay with Charlotte, you lose us, Elena said quietly, her hand moving instinctively to her still flat stomach. Nathan, I won't raise our child in the shadows while you play happy husband with another woman. Choose her or choose us, but I won't be your secret anymore. Have you ever been caught between the life you're supposed to want and the person you've never stopped loving? Have you ever made choices that seemed right but felt completely wrong? Tonight, you'll witness a billionaire's impossible choice between his current wife and his pregnant ex-wife, knowing that choosing love might cost him everything he's built. But here's the question that will haunt you. When you find out your ex-wife is carrying your child from a secret affair, do you choose duty or desire, obligation or obsession? If you believe that true love is worth any sacrifice and that some connections transcend time and circumstances, hit that subscribe button right now because this story will take you on an emotional journey that shows what happens when passion collides with responsibility. 5 years earlier, Nathan Cross had married Elena Rodriguez when they were both 25 years old, fresh out of college, and convinced that love could conquer any obstacle. They had met during their junior year at Columbia University, where Nathan was studying business and Elena was pursuing fine arts with a focus on painting. You're in my spot, Elena had said the first time she saw Nathan sitting at her favorite table in the library, her arms full of art history books and her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun. I don't see your name on it, Nathan had replied with a grin, looking up from his economics textbook to see the most beautiful woman he'd ever encountered. That's because I'm too polite to carve my initials into public property, Elena had shot back, though her eyes were sparkling with amusement rather than real annoyance. Well, I'm too much of a gentleman to let a lady stand, Nathan had said, gathering his books and gesturing to the chair. Please, take your kingdom back, Your Majesty. Elena had laughed, a sound that would become Nathan's favorite music. Thank you, kind sir. I suppose you can share my kingdom if you promise not to hog the good lighting. That conversation had led to study sessions, which led to coffee dates, which led to long walks around campus discussing their dreams and ambitions. Nathan had been captivated by Elena's passion for art and her ability to see beauty in everything around them. Elena had been drawn to Nathan's drive and intelligence, his confidence that he could build something meaningful with his life. What do you want to do after graduation? Elena had asked during one of their evening walks through Central Park. Change the world, Nathan had replied without hesitation. Build a company that revolutionizes technology and makes enough money to solve real problems. That's very noble, Elena had said, though something in her tone suggested she was gently teasing him. And where does happiness fit into this world-changing plan? Happiness comes from accomplishment, Nathan had said confidently. From building something that lasts, making a difference, leaving a legacy. I think happiness comes from simpler things, Elena had disagreed softly. From creating beauty, connecting with people you love, finding peace in everyday moments. Those are very different philosophies, Nathan had observed. Maybe that's why we balance each other out, Elena had replied, taking his hand as they walked. You can teach me ambition, and I can teach you contentment. They had been inseparable for the remaining 2 years of college, planning a future that seemed perfectly aligned despite their different approaches to life. Nathan had proposed the night before graduation, in Elena's tiny studio apartment surrounded by her paintings and dreams. Elena Rodriguez, you make me want to be better than I am, Nathan had said, dropping to one knee beside her easel where she was working on a painting of the sunset they'd watched together the evening before. Will you marry me and build a life that's more beautiful than anything either of us could create alone? Yes, Elena had whispered, tears streaming down her face as she looked at the ring he'd bought with money saved from his part-time job at a tech startup. Nathan, yes, of course yes. Their wedding had been small but perfect, held in Elena's family's backyard in Queens with 200 of their closest friends and family members. Elena had worn her grandmother's wedding dress, and Nathan had worn his father's suit, both of them radiant with happiness and certainty about their future together. I promise to love you for exactly who you are, Elena had vowed during their ceremony, and to support your dreams even when I don't understand them. I promise to never let success mean more to me than you do, Nathan had replied, meaning every word in that moment. Elena, you are my greatest accomplishment, and loving you is my most important job. For the first 2 years of their marriage, they had kept those promises. Nathan had started his technology company, Cross Industries, while Elena had worked as a freelance graphic designer and painted in their spare bedroom that doubled as her studio. Money had been tight, but they had been happy in their cramped apartment, building dreams together and supporting each other's ambitions. Look at this, Nathan had said excitedly one evening, bursting into their apartment with a bottle of champagne and a huge grin on his face. We got the Parker Industries contract. Elena, this could be the break we've been waiting for. That's wonderful, Elena had said, abandoning her painting to celebrate with him. Nathan, I'm so proud of you. We did this together, Nathan had insisted, pulling her into his arms. Your design work on the presentation materials was what sold them. Elena, we're a team. But as Cross Industries had grown, Nathan's attention had increasingly shifted from we to I. Late nights at the office had become the norm. Weekend work sessions had replaced their leisurely mornings in bed. Business dinners had taken precedence over their quiet evenings at home. Nathan, when was the last time we had dinner together without your phone on the table? Elena had asked one evening after he'd taken 3 calls during their anniversary dinner. Business doesn't stop for personal convenience, Nathan had replied, though he'd had the grace to look guilty. Elena, I'm building something important here. Something that will provide security for our future. What about our present? Elena had asked quietly. Nathan, we're so focused on building a future that we're missing our actual life. This is temporary, Nathan had promised, taking her hand across the restaurant table. Once the company is established, once we have real financial security, I'll be able to delegate more and focus on us. But temporary had stretched into months and then years. Elena had found herself eating dinner alone most nights, sleeping alone when Nathan worked until dawn, attending social events by herself because Nathan was always traveling for business. I feel like I'm married to a ghost, Elena had confessed to her sister Carmen during one of their weekly phone calls. Nathan leaves before I wake up and comes home after I go to sleep. When he is here, he's checking emails or taking calls or planning his next business trip. Have you talked to him about this? Carmen had asked. I've tried, Elena had said, though they both knew her attempts at conversation had become increasingly frustrated and brief. But Nathan sees everything through the lens of business strategy. When I say I'm lonely, he hears that I don't appreciate his hard work. When I say I miss spending time together, he hears that I don't understand the demands of building a company. Elena, what do you want? Carmen had asked gently. I want the man I married back, Elena had replied honestly. I want conversations about things other than profit margins. I want lazy Sunday mornings and impromptu dinner dates and a husband who remembers that he has a wife. The breaking point had come during their 4th year of marriage, when Cross Industries had become wildly successful and Nathan had been offered opportunities to expand internationally. Elena had hoped that success would mean more time together, but instead it had meant even greater demands on Nathan's attention. I've been offered a partnership with a major European tech firm, Nathan had announced one evening, barely looking up from his laptop as he shared the news. Elena, this could make us hundreds of millions of dollars. Us? Elena had asked, her voice heavy with exhaustion. Nathan, when was the last time you used the word us to refer to something that wasn't business-related? What are you talking about? Nathan had looked up from his computer for the first time in the conversation. I'm talking about the fact that you just said this partnership could make us hundreds of millions of dollars, but you didn't say it would allow us to travel together or spend more time together or start the family we've been talking about for 3 years. Money provides options, Nathan had said, his tone taking on the patience he used when explaining business concepts to people he considered less informed. Elena, financial security is what allows couples to have families and travel and pursue their dreams. What about pursuing our dreams together? Elena had asked, closing her own laptop where she'd been working on a painting commission. Nathan, when was the last time you asked about my art? When was the last time you looked at something I've painted? Nathan had been quiet for a moment, and Elena could see him trying to remember. The silence had stretched between them, heavy with the weight of his inattention and her resentment. I look at your work, Nathan had said finally, though they both knew it wasn't true. You look through my work, Elena had corrected. You see it as decorations in our apartment, not as expressions of who I am or what I care about. Elena, I'm working 18-hour days to build something meaningful. I don't have time to analyze every painting you create. I'm not asking you to analyze them, Elena had said, tears beginning to fall. I'm asking you to see them, to see me. Nathan, I feel invisible in my own marriage. That's dramatic, Nathan had replied, turning back to his laptop. Elena, you're being overly emotional about this. Overly emotional. Elena had stood up, her voice rising with hurt and anger. Nathan, I'm telling you that I feel neglected and alone in my marriage, and you're dismissing my feelings as overly emotional? I'm saying that you're not considering the bigger picture, Nathan had said, his voice taking on the cool tone he used in business negotiations. Elena, I'm building an empire that will provide security and opportunities for our entire future. That requires sacrifice and focus. Sacrifice from who? Elena had demanded. Because it seems like I'm the one sacrificing our relationship while you pursue your empire. You're benefiting from my success too, Nathan had pointed out. Elena, you live in a beautiful apartment, you drive a nice car, you have financial freedom to pursue your art without worrying about money. I don't want your money, Elena had said quietly. I want my husband. I want the man who used to ask about my day and care about my dreams and remember that we're supposed to be building a life together. I am building a life for us, Nathan had insisted. Elena, everything I do is for our future. No, Elena had said with heartbreaking clarity. Everything you do is for your future. I'm just along for the ride. That conversation had marked the beginning of the end. Over the following months, their attempts at communication had devolved into arguments about priorities, time, and what constituted a meaningful life. Elena had felt increasingly invisible in Nathan's world of business deals and networking events. Nathan had felt increasingly frustrated by Elena's inability to appreciate the opportunities his success was creating. I want to have a baby, Elena had said one morning over breakfast, hoping that talk of starting a family might remind Nathan of their shared dreams. Not now, Nathan had replied automatically, his attention focused on the financial reports he was reviewing. Elena, the European expansion is going to require all my focus for at least the next 2 years. It's always going to be something, Elena had said sadly. First it was establishing the company, then it was securing major clients. Now it's international expansion. Nathan, when exactly is it going to be the right time for us to have a family? When the business is stable enough that I can delegate more responsibilities, Nathan had said, still not looking up from his papers. The business is stable, Elena had pointed out. Nathan, Cross Industries is worth $50 million. How much more stable does it need to be? There's always more to build, Nathan had replied. And in that moment, Elena had understood that his ambition would never be satisfied, that there would always be another deal, another opportunity, another reason to postpone their personal life. I can't do this anymore, Elena had said quietly. Can't do what? Nathan had asked, finally looking up from his financial reports. Can't be married to someone who loves his company more than he loves his wife, Elena had replied, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. That's not fair, Nathan had protested. Elena, everything I do is motivated by love for you. No, Elena had said sadly. Everything you do is motivated by love for success. I'm just the person who's supposed to be grateful for the byproducts of your ambition. So what are you saying? Nathan had asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. I'm saying that I want a separation, Elena had said, each word feeling like a knife in her chest. Nathan, I want you to choose between building your empire and building our marriage, because I can't compete with your company anymore. Elena, you're asking me to choose between my life's work and our relationship. I'm asking you to choose between money and love, Elena had corrected. And the fact that you see them as the same thing tells me everything I need to know about your priorities. Nathan had stared at her across their breakfast table, seeing the determination in her eyes and understanding that this wasn't a negotiating tactic or an emotional outburst. Elena was serious about ending their marriage. I can't give up everything I've worked for, Nathan had said finally. And I can't keep pretending that I matter to you, Elena had replied. Nathan, I love you, but I won't spend the rest of my life competing with your ambition for your attention. The divorce proceedings had been swift and bitter, both of them too hurt and proud to attempt reconciliation. Elena had moved out of their luxury apartment and into a modest studio in Brooklyn. Nathan had thrown himself even deeper into his work, using business success to numb the pain of losing the woman he had never learned to prioritize properly. You'll regret this, Nathan had said during one of their final conversations, his voice cold with hurt and anger. Elena, you're throwing away a life that most people would kill for. I'm not throwing away a life, Elena had replied sadly. I'm trying to find one. The divorce had been finalized on a rainy Thursday in October, exactly 5 years after their wedding. Elena had walked out of the courthouse feeling both liberated and devastated, free from a marriage that had made her invisible, but heartbroken over losing the man she had loved since college. Nathan had signed the papers in his office, surrounded by the business empire that had cost him his marriage, and for the first time in years he had wondered if success was worth the price he had paid for it. But by then it was too late to change course. Elena was gone, and Nathan had convinced himself that he was better off without the distraction of a wife who didn't understand the demands of building something meaningful. 2 years later, Nathan had met Charlotte Westfield at a charity gala, and within 6 months he had proposed to the woman who seemed like everything Elena wasn't. Charlotte understood the business world, appreciated the lifestyle that money could provide, and never complained about Nathan's long hours or frequent travel. Charlotte gets it, Nathan had told his business partner Marcus during their engagement party. She understands what it takes to build something significant, and Elena didn't. Marcus had asked carefully, remembering how happy Nathan had seemed during his first marriage despite his constant complaints about Elena's lack of ambition. Elena wanted me to choose between her and my company, Nathan had said. Charlotte wants me to succeed. But as Nathan stood at the altar 18 months later, watching Charlotte walk down the aisle in a designer wedding dress that cost more than Elena's entire wedding, he had found himself remembering his first wife's laugh and wondering if he was making the right choice for the wrong reasons. Do you, Nathan Cross, take Charlotte Westfield to be your lawfully wedded wife? The minister had asked. I do, Nathan had replied, though the words had felt hollow compared to the joy he had felt saying them to Elena 7 years earlier. Charlotte had been the perfect CEO wife for 2 years, accompanying Nathan to business events, managing their social calendar, and never questioning his priorities or demanding attention he was willing to give. Their marriage had been comfortable, successful, and completely lacking in the passion that had defined Nathan's relationship with Elena. We should start trying for a baby, Charlotte had announced one evening over dinner at their favorite expensive restaurant. Nathan, I'm 32, and I'd like to have children while I'm still young enough to enjoy them. That sounds reasonable, Nathan had agreed. though the conversation had felt more like a business planning session than a romantic discussion about starting a family. They had been trying to conceive for over a year when Nathan had encountered Elena at the Morrison Gallery opening, 3 years after their divorce. He had been attending the event with Charlotte, who was on the gallery's board of directors, when he had seen a familiar figure standing in front of a painting that took his breath away. Elena stood before a canvas that seemed to capture the essence of heartbreak and hope in swirls of blue and gold, her dark hair longer than he remembered, her face more mature, but still devastatingly beautiful. "Excuse me for a moment," Nathan had murmured to Charlotte, who was engaged in conversation with potential donors. Nathan had approached Elena slowly, his heart racing in a way it hadn't in years. When she turned and saw him, her face had cycled through surprise, pain, and something that looked dangerously like longing. "Nathan," Elena had said softly, her voice exactly as he remembered it. "Elena, your painting, it's incredible." "Thank you," she had replied, though her eyes were guarded. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Charlotte is on the board," Nathan had explained, gesturing toward his wife, who was still across the room. "Elena, how are you?" "I'm well," Elena had said carefully. "And you? Married life seems to suit you." There had been something in her tone that made Nathan look at her more closely. "Elena, are you happy?" The question had hung between them, heavy with history and unspoken truths. Elena had been quiet for a long moment, studying his face. "Are you?" she had asked instead of answering. Nathan had opened his mouth to give the automatic response, to say that he was successful and content and living the life he had always wanted. But looking into Elena's eyes, he had found himself unable to lie. "I don't know," Nathan had admitted quietly. "That's honest," Elena had said with a sad smile. "Nathan, I should go. This is complicated enough without." "Without what?" Nathan had asked, stepping closer to her. "Without me remembering why I loved you," Elena had said, her voice barely a whisper. Before Nathan could respond, Charlotte had appeared at his side, her smile polite, but her eyes sharp as she assessed the woman her husband was talking to. "Darling, aren't you going to introduce me?" Charlotte had asked, her arm sliding possessively through Nathan's. "Charlotte, this is Elena Rodriguez, an artist whose work is featured tonight," Nathan had said carefully. "Elena, my wife Charlotte." "It's lovely to meet you," Charlotte had said with practiced charm, though Nathan could sense the tension beneath her polite exterior. "Congratulations on your marriage," Elena had replied graciously. "Nathan, I hope you're very happy." Elena had walked away then, leaving Nathan standing with his perfect wife, while his heart raced with memories of the woman he had never gotten over. "She's quite beautiful," Charlotte had observed, her tone carefully neutral. "Yes," Nathan had agreed, watching Elena disappear into the crowd. "She is." That night, Nathan had lain awake beside his sleeping wife, thinking about Elena's painting and the question she had asked him. Was he happy? He had everything he had thought he wanted: a successful company, a beautiful wife, social status, and financial security. But lying in his king-sized bed in his luxury penthouse, Nathan had felt emptier than he had in his cramped apartment with Elena years earlier. The next day, Nathan had found himself researching Elena's career, learning that she had become a successful artist whose work was shown in galleries across the country. She lived modestly in the same Brooklyn studio where she had moved after their divorce, and according to social media, she appeared to be single. Nathan had told himself he was just curious about his ex-wife's well-being, but he had found himself driving past her neighborhood, hoping for a glimpse of the woman who had haunted his thoughts since the gallery opening. The second encounter had happened 3 weeks later, at a coffee shop near Elena's studio. Nathan had been in the area for a business meeting and had stopped for coffee when he had seen Elena at a corner table, working on sketches in a notebook. "Elena?" Nathan had approached her table, his heart racing with the same intensity he had felt as a college student asking her to study together. "Nathan," Elena had looked up in surprise, closing her sketchbook. "What are you doing in this neighborhood?" "Business meeting," Nathan had said, though the meeting had ended an hour earlier and he had been driving around looking for an excuse to see her. "May I sit?" Elena had hesitated, then nodded toward the empty chair across from her. "5 minutes." "How have you been?" Nathan had asked, studying her face and noticing the laugh lines around her eyes, the confidence in her posture that hadn't been there during their marriage. "Good," Elena had said simply. Nathan, what do you want? I want to know if you're happy, Nathan had said honestly. That's not your concern anymore, Elena had replied, though her voice lacked conviction. Elena, I think about you, Nathan had admitted, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. I think about us, about what we had, about the mistakes I made. Don't, Elena had said quietly, gathering her things to leave. Nathan, don't do this. Do what? Make me remember why losing you nearly destroyed me, Elena had said, standing up from the table. You made your choice 5 years ago. You chose your company over our marriage. Live with that choice. She had started to walk away, but Nathan had followed her, catching her arm gently as she reached the door. Elena, wait. Please. Elena had turned to face him, and Nathan had seen tears glistening in her eyes. What do you want from me, Nathan? I want to understand why I can't stop thinking about you, Nathan had said desperately. I want to know why I feel more alive in 5 minutes with you than I have in 2 years of marriage to Charlotte. Because Charlotte isn't me, Elena had said simply, and I'm not her. Nathan, you married someone who fits your life, but you never got over the person who fit your heart. Elena, go home to your wife, Elena had said firmly, and stop torturing both of us with what-ifs. But Nathan hadn't been able to stop. Over the following weeks, he had found excuses to be in Elena's neighborhood, hoping for chance encounters that felt like fate. He had sent flowers to her studio with notes that said simply thinking of you. He had called her phone just to hear her voice on the voicemail. Nathan, you have to stop, Elena had said when she finally answered one of his calls. This isn't fair to any of us. Meet me for coffee, Nathan had pleaded. One conversation, Elena. Let me explain how I feel. I know how you feel, Elena had replied. The question is what you're going to do about it. I don't know, Nathan had admitted. Elena, I'm married. I have responsibilities, obligations. And I'm the complication that doesn't fit into your perfect life, Elena had finished sadly. Nathan, this is exactly why our marriage failed. You're still choosing duty over desire, obligation over love. It's not that simple. It never is with you, Elena had said. Goodbye, Nathan. But despite her words, Elena had agreed to meet him the following week at a small restaurant far from their usual neighborhoods. She had told herself she needed closure, a final conversation that would allow her to move on from the man who had broken her heart and was now threatening to break it again. Thank you for coming, Nathan had said when Elena arrived, looking beautiful in a simple black dress that made his chest tight with longing. This is a mistake, Elena had said, sliding into the booth across from him. Then why are you here? Nathan had asked gently. Elena had been quiet for a moment, studying his face. Because I never learned how to stop loving you. The admission had hung between them like a confession, dangerous and electric. Nathan had reached across the table to take her hand, and Elena had let him, both of them trembling at the contact. Elena, I made the biggest mistake of my life when I let you go, Nathan had said, his voice thick with emotion. I thought success would fill the hole you left, but nothing has. No amount of money or achievement or social status has made me feel the way I felt when I was with you. But not enough to fight for us when it mattered, Elena had pointed out, though she hadn't pulled her hand away from his. I was young and stupid and convinced that I could have everything without making hard choices, Nathan had said. Elena, I know I can't undo the past, but I need you to know that losing you was the greatest failure of my life. Nathan, you're married, Elena had reminded him, though her voice lacked conviction. To a woman I respect but don't love, Nathan had said honestly. Elena, Charlotte is perfect on paper, but she's not you. She'll never be you. Then why did you marry her? Elena had asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Because she was safe, Nathan had admitted. Because being with her didn't require me to choose between love and ambition. Because I thought I could build a life with someone who wouldn't challenge my priorities. And now I realize that a life without passion isn't really living, Nathan had said, bringing Elena's hand to his lips. Elena, I know this is complicated and wrong and potentially destructive, but I can't pretend I don't still love you. Elena had stared at him across the table, seeing the man she had fallen in love with in college beneath the successful CEO he had become. Nathan, what are you asking me to do? I'm asking you to give us another chance, Nathan had said. I'm asking you to let me prove that I can choose love over everything else. By having an affair with your ex-wife? Elena had asked, though her heart was racing with possibility. By remembering what we had and seeing if we can build something better, Nathan had replied. Elena, I know the timing is impossible and the situation is messy, but I can't walk away from you again. Elena had looked into his eyes and seen the same intensity that had captivated her 15 years earlier. Despite every rational thought telling her to leave, she had found herself nodding. One chance, Elena had whispered. Nathan, if we do this, if we open this door, there's no going back. I don't want to go back, Nathan had said firmly. Elena, I want to go forward. With you. If you've ever found yourself torn between what you're supposed to want and what your heart actually desires, hit that like button now, because this story is about to get even more complicated and emotionally intense. That conversation had marked the beginning of their secret affair, a relationship that was both a return to their deepest connection and a step into morally ambiguous territory that would challenge everything they thought they knew about love, loyalty, and the price of following your heart. For 6 months, Nathan and Elena had been meeting in secret, rediscovering the passion and intimacy that had been missing from both their lives. But as Elena sat in that hotel room holding a positive pregnancy test, they both understood that their secret affair was about to become a very public reckoning that would force Nathan to choose between the empire he had built and the love he had never gotten over. The pregnancy changed everything, and Elena's ultimatum made it clear that Nathan could no longer live in both worlds. He would have to choose between Charlotte and the life he was supposed to want, or Elena and the love that had defined every meaningful moment of his adult life. But with Charlotte also trying to get pregnant and their marriage built on social and financial foundations that would crumble if exposed, Nathan's choice would cost him far more than money or status. It would cost him everything he had spent 10 years building, forcing him to decide once and for all whether love was worth any sacrifice. Nathan spent the next 3 days after Elena's pregnancy revelation living in a fog of guilt and confusion. Every interaction with Charlotte felt like a betrayal. Every business meeting felt meaningless, and every moment apart from Elena felt like torture. He found himself staring at his phone, wanting to call Elena but unsure what he could possibly say that would make their impossible situation any less devastating. You seem distracted lately, Charlotte observed over breakfast on Thursday morning, her perfectly manicured fingers wrapped around her coffee cup as she studied her husband's face. Nathan, is everything all right with the European merger? The merger is fine, Nathan replied automatically, though he hadn't thought about business in days. Charlotte, I'm just tired. The negotiations have been more complex than expected. Perhaps you should take a vacation after everything is finalized, Charlotte suggested, her tone carrying the careful concern of a wife who had learned to navigate her husband's moods. We could go to the Hamptons for a long weekend, maybe invite some friends. Nathan looked at his wife across their marble breakfast table, taking in her blonde hair styled in a perfect bob, her designer suit that cost more than most people made in a month, her calm competence that had never once challenged him to be more than he was. Charlotte represented everything he had thought he wanted: beauty, breeding, social connections, and complete compatibility with his ambitious lifestyle. That sounds nice, Nathan said, though the thought of pretending to be happily married while Elena carried his child made him feel sick. Nathan, are you sure you're all right? Charlotte asked, her blue eyes narrowing slightly. You've been acting strange for weeks. Before Nathan could respond, his phone buzzed with a text message from Elena. We need to talk. It's urgent. Nathan felt his heart rate spike as he read the message. I have to go, he said, standing abruptly from the table. Emergency at the office. At 7 in the morning? Charlotte asked, though her tone remained pleasant. Nathan, what kind of emergency requires your immediate attention before business hours? The kind that could cost us millions if I don't handle it personally, Nathan replied, grabbing his jacket and keys. I'll call you later. Nathan was out the door before Charlotte could ask any more questions, his hands shaking as he started his car and drove toward the hotel where he and Elena had been meeting. 20 minutes later, he found Elena pacing the room with tears streaming down her face and what looked like medical papers in her hands. Elena, what's wrong? Nathan asked immediately, crossing the room to take her in his arms. I went to the doctor yesterday, Elena said, her voice breaking as she leaned into his embrace. Nathan, there are complications with the pregnancy. Nathan felt ice form in his stomach. What kind of complications? My blood pressure is dangerously high, Elena explained, pulling back to show him the test results. The doctor says it's caused by stress, and if it doesn't improve, it could be dangerous for both me and the baby. What does that mean? Nathan asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. It means I can't keep living in limbo, Elena said firmly, wiping tears from her cheeks. Nathan, the stress of our secret affair is literally threatening our child's life. I need you to make a decision. Elena, you know how complicated this is, Nathan began, but she cut him off. I know exactly how complicated this is, Elena said, her voice rising with frustration and fear. I'm the one carrying your child while hiding from your wife. I'm the one lying to my doctor about the father's identity. I'm the one whose blood pressure is spiking every time I think about the impossible situation we're in. Nathan sank into the hotel room's chair, overwhelmed by the weight of the choice Elena was forcing him to make. If I leave Charlotte, I lose everything. The prenup gives her half of everything I've built, plus her family has connections that could destroy Cross Industries completely. And if you stay with Charlotte, you lose me and our child, Elena said quietly, her hand moving protectively to her still small belly. Nathan, I won't raise our baby in secret. I won't be your mistress while you play happy husband with another woman. Elena, please, I just need more time to figure out how to handle this, Nathan pleaded. Time is exactly what we don't have, Elena replied, showing him the doctor's warnings about her blood pressure. Nathan, our child could die if I don't reduce the stress in my life. How much clearer can the universe be about what choice I need to make? Before Nathan could respond, his phone rang with Charlotte's number. He looked at Elena apologetically and answered the call. Darling, I have wonderful news. Charlotte's voice came through the speaker with barely contained excitement. I just left Dr. Pemberton's office, and Nathan, we're pregnant. Nathan felt the world tilt on its axis as the impossible irony of the situation hit him. Both women in his life were now carrying his children, making his choice exponentially more complicated and devastating. Nathan, are you there? Charlotte's voice continued through the phone. Yes, Nathan managed to say, his eyes locked on Elena's shocked face. That's wonderful news, Charlotte. I'll be home soon, and we can celebrate properly. I love you, Charlotte said before hanging up, her happiness evident even through the phone. Nathan set his phone down and looked at Elena, who was staring at him with a mixture of heartbreak and resignation. She's pregnant too, Elena said quietly. It wasn't a question. Yes, Nathan admitted, his voice barely a whisper. Elena was quiet for a long moment, processing the magnitude of their situation. So now you have two wives carrying your children, and you still can't choose between us. Elena, this changes everything, Nathan said desperately. I can't abandon Charlotte when she's pregnant with my child. But you can abandon me when I'm pregnant with your child? Elena asked, her voice sharp with pain. That's not what I meant, Nathan protested. Elena, I love you, but Charlotte is my legal wife. I have obligations, Elena repeated bitterly. Nathan, do you hear yourself? You're talking about our children as if they're business contracts to be managed. I'm trying to be responsible, Nathan said, though his words sounded hollow even to him. Responsible would have been not having an affair with your ex-wife, Elena pointed out. Responsible would have been choosing between us before we reached this point. Nathan, what you're being now is cowardly. The accusation hit Nathan like a physical blow because he knew it was true. He had allowed himself to live in both worlds, taking what he wanted from Elena while maintaining the security of his marriage to Charlotte. Now that his choices had consequences, he was paralyzed by the very indecision that had destroyed his first marriage. Elena, I need you to understand that this isn't just about what I want, Nathan said, though he could hear the weakness in his own argument. Charlotte's family has connections throughout the tech industry. If I leave her, especially while she's pregnant, they could destroy Cross Industries completely. So this is about money, Elena said with heartbreaking clarity. Again, just like it was when we got divorced the first time. It's about more than money, Nathan protested. It's about the thousands of people who work for my company, about the obligations I have to investors and partners. And what about your obligations to me? Elena asked quietly. What about your obligations to our child? Nathan stared at Elena, seeing the woman he had loved since college standing before him pregnant with his child, and feeling completely unable to choose her over the empire he had built. The realization of his own cowardice made him sick, but he couldn't seem to overcome the fear of losing everything he had worked for. I can't make this decision right now, Nathan said finally. Elena, I need time to figure out how to handle both pregnancies, how to protect everyone involved. Elena looked at him for a long moment, and Nathan could see her making a decision that would change everything between them. Then I'll make the decision for you, Elena said calmly, gathering her purse and medical papers. Nathan, I'm done being your secret. I'm done competing with your wife for your attention. I'm done pretending that what we have is enough when you've made it clear that it isn't. Elena, what are you saying? Nathan asked, panic rising in his chest. I'm saying goodbye, Elena replied, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. Nathan, I'm going to raise our child alone, and I'm going to tell them that their father chose money over love, just like you did with me. You can't just disappear, Nathan said desperately, reaching for her as she moved toward the door. Watch me, Elena said, stepping away from his touch. Nathan, you've had 6 months to choose between us, and you've chosen Charlotte every single day by refusing to leave her. I'm not going to keep hoping you'll find the courage to choose love over security. Elena, please don't do this, Nathan begged. I love you. No, you don't, Elena said sadly. You love the idea of me. You love the passion we share. You love having me available when your perfect marriage feels empty. But Nathan, if you really loved me, you would have chosen me years ago. Elena walked to the hotel room door, then paused with her hand on the handle. For what it's worth, I hope Charlotte's pregnancy goes smoothly. I hope you're happy with the choice you're making. And I hope our child never has to feel the disappointment of having a father who's too afraid to fight for what he claims to love. With that, Elena left the hotel room and Nathan's life, leaving him sitting alone with the weight of his indecision and the growing realization that he had just lost the most important thing in his world for the second time. 2 days later, Nathan was sitting in his office trying to focus on quarterly reports when his assistant knocked on his door. Mr. Cross, there's a private investigator here to see you, she said nervously. He says it's regarding personal matters. Nathan felt his stomach drop as a middle-aged man in a cheap suit entered his office carrying a manila envelope. Mr. Cross, my name is Detective Frank Morrison, the man said, settling into the chair across from Nathan's desk. I've been hired by your wife to investigate some concerns she has about your recent behavior. Concerns? Nathan asked, though he already knew where this conversation was heading. Mrs. Cross noticed some irregularities in your schedule and some unexplained expenses, Detective Morrison explained, opening his envelope to reveal photographs that made Nathan's blood run cold. She asked me to follow you to determine if there was cause for worry. The photographs showed Nathan and Elena entering and leaving the hotel where they had been meeting, embracing in the parking lot, kissing goodbye. The images were clear and damning, providing undeniable evidence of their affair. Mr. Cross, I'm required to report my findings to the person who hired me, Detective Morrison continued. I thought you might want to have a conversation with your wife before she receives these photographs. Nathan stared at the images of himself betraying his marriage vows, understanding that his carefully constructed life was about to explode in ways that would destroy everything he had built. When does my wife receive your report? Nathan asked quietly. This afternoon, Detective Morrison replied. Mr. Cross, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've seen a lot of marriages destroyed by infidelity. If you have any chance of salvaging your relationship with your wife, you need to talk to her before she sees these pictures. Nathan thanked the detective and spent the next hour staring at the photographs of his betrayal, trying to figure out how to explain 6 months of lies to the woman who was carrying his child. By the time he arrived home that evening, Charlotte was sitting in their living room with the detective's report spread across their coffee table. Hello, Nathan, Charlotte said calmly, her voice carrying an ice that he had never heard before. I think we need to have a conversation. Nathan looked at his wife, seeing the hurt and fury beneath her composed exterior, and understood that the reckoning he had been avoiding was finally here. Charlotte, I can explain, Nathan began, though he had no idea what explanation could possibly justify what he had done. "Can you?" Charlotte asked, holding up one of the photographs. "Can you explain why you've been having an affair with your ex-wife for 6 months while I've been trying to have your baby?" "It's complicated," Nathan said weakly, the same excuse he had given Elena when she demanded he choose between them. "It's really not," Charlotte replied, her composure beginning to crack. "Nathan, you've been lying to me every single day for 6 months. You've been sleeping with another woman while coming home to my bed. How exactly is that complicated?" Nathan sank into the chair across from his wife, feeling the weight of his choices crushing down on him. "Charlotte, I never meant for this to happen." "But it did happen," Charlotte said firmly. "Nathan, the detective's report shows you've been meeting with Elena Rodriguez multiple times per week since February. This wasn't a mistake or a moment of weakness. This was a sustained affair with the woman you divorced because you chose your career over your marriage." "Elena and I have history," Nathan said, though he knew how pathetic his excuse sounded. "And we have a marriage," Charlotte shot back. "Nathan, I'm 12 weeks pregnant with your child, and I discover that you've been cheating on me with your ex-wife. Do you have any idea how that makes me feel?" Nathan looked at Charlotte, this woman who had given him 2 years of uncomplicated partnership, who had never demanded more than he was willing to give, who had asked for nothing but loyalty and respect in return for supporting his ambitions. "Charlotte, I'm sorry," Nathan said, meaning it completely even as he knew it would never be enough. "Sorry doesn't undo 6 months of betrayal," Charlotte replied, tears beginning to flow despite her attempts to maintain control. "Nathan, I need to know if you're planning to leave me for her." The question hung in the air between them, and Nathan realized that Charlotte was asking him to make the same choice Elena had demanded. Choose between the wife who represented his secure, successful life and the ex-wife who represented his deepest passion and connection. "I don't know," Nathan admitted honestly. "Charlotte, I'm so confused about everything right now." "Then let me make it simple for you," Charlotte said, standing up from the sofa with a dignity that made Nathan feel even more ashamed of his behavior. "Nathan, if you choose Elena, I will file for divorce immediately and ensure that your betrayal becomes public knowledge. My family's connections will make sure that every business partner, investor, and client knows exactly what kind of man you are." "Charlotte, you're pregnant," Nathan protested. "We can work through this." "Can we?" Charlotte asked. "Nathan, can you honestly tell me that you'll never see Elena again? Can you promise me that you've chosen our marriage over whatever you think you have with her?" Nathan opened his mouth to make the promise Charlotte needed to hear, but the words wouldn't come. Even faced with the destruction of his business empire and his marriage, he couldn't bring himself to lie about his feelings for Elena. "That's what I thought," Charlotte said sadly. "Nathan, I'll be staying at my sister's house until you decide what you want. When you've made your choice, have your attorney contact mine." "Charlotte, wait," Nathan called as she gathered her purse and car keys. "We can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can work through the trust issues." "Nathan, this isn't about trust issues," Charlotte said, pausing at the front door. "This is about the fact that you're in love with another woman and you don't have the courage to admit it. I won't spend the rest of my life competing with Elena Rodriguez for my husband's heart. And if I choose you," Nathan asked desperately, "then you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what would have happened if you'd been brave enough to choose love over security," Charlotte replied. "Nathan, we both deserve better than that." After Charlotte left, Nathan sat alone in their penthouse apartment, surrounded by the trappings of success that felt completely meaningless without someone to share them with. He had managed to lose both women in his life by refusing to choose between them, and now he faced the possibility of raising 2 children with 2 different women who both had every reason to hate him. Nathan picked up his phone to call Elena, desperate to apologize for his cowardice and beg her to give him another chance. But when he dialed her number, he discovered that she had changed it. He drove to her studio, but the building manager informed him that Elena had moved out 3 days earlier without leaving a forwarding address. Elena had meant what she said about disappearing from his life, and Nathan had no way to find her or make amends for choosing security over love once again. For the next week, Nathan threw himself into damage control for his business, meeting with attorneys and public relations specialists to prepare for the scandal that would erupt when Charlotte filed for divorce and made his affair public knowledge. Nathan, I have to ask, said his business partner Marcus during one of their crisis management meetings. Was it worth it? Was the affair with Elena worth potentially losing everything? Nathan considered the question seriously, thinking about the 6 months of passion and connection he had shared with Elena, compared to the 2 years of comfortable emptiness he had experienced with Charlotte. Yes, Nathan said quietly. If I had been brave enough to choose Elena, if I had been willing to sacrifice the business for love, it would have been worth it. And now I've lost Elena, I'm losing Charlotte, and I'm about to lose the business too, Nathan replied. I've managed to make the worst possible choice by refusing to make any choice at all. The scandal broke 3 days later when Charlotte's attorney held a press conference announcing their divorce and revealing Nathan's affair with his ex-wife. The business media picked up the story immediately, portraying Nathan as a tech executive who couldn't manage his personal life and questioning his fitness to lead a major corporation. Cross Industries stock dropped 30% in the first hour of trading, Nathan's CFO reported during an emergency board meeting. Several major clients are reconsidering their contracts, and the European merger is on hold pending resolution of the leadership crisis. What are our options? Nathan asked, though he already knew the answer would be devastating. The board is prepared to offer you a buyout package, the CFO explained. You would retain a minority stake in the company, but step down as CEO. Nathan, it's the only way to preserve the business and protect our employees' jobs. Nathan looked around the boardroom table at the executives he had hired and worked with for years, understanding that his personal choices had endangered everything they had built together. I'll consider the buyout offer, Nathan said quietly, but I need a few days to review the terms. That evening, Nathan sat alone in his penthouse, drinking expensive whiskey and staring at the city lights spread out below him. He had built a technology empire worth hundreds of millions of dollars, but he was about to lose it all because he had been too cowardly to choose love over money when it mattered most. Nathan's phone rang with an unknown number, and his heart leaped with hope that it might be Elena reaching out despite her promise to disappear from his life. Nathan Cross, he answered hopefully. Mr. Cross, this is Dr. Patricia Martinez from Brooklyn Methodist Hospital, came a professional female voice. I'm calling about Elena Rodriguez. You're listed as her emergency contact. Nathan felt ice form in his stomach. Is Elena all right? Is the baby okay? Ms. Rodriguez was brought to the emergency room this evening with severe preeclampsia, Dr. Martinez explained. Her blood pressure reached dangerous levels, and we had to perform an emergency cesarean section to save both her life and the baby's. Are they okay? Nathan asked, already reaching for his car keys. Ms. Rodriguez is stable but critical, Dr. Martinez said. The baby is in our neonatal intensive care unit. Mr. Cross, given the premature birth at 32 weeks, the next 72 hours will be crucial for both patients. Nathan was in his car and driving toward Brooklyn before the doctor finished explaining Elena's condition. All thoughts of business crises and divorce proceedings disappeared as he faced the possibility of losing Elena and their child due to the stress he had caused by refusing to choose love over security. 20 minutes later, Nathan burst through the doors of Brooklyn Methodist Hospital and found Dr. Martinez waiting for him in the family consultation room. Mr. Cross, I need to explain the situation clearly, Dr. Martinez said gently. Ms. Rodriguez developed severe preeclampsia due to extreme stress during her pregnancy. Her blood pressure reached life-threatening levels, and we had to deliver the baby 8 weeks early to save her life. Can I see her? Nathan asked, his voice breaking with emotion. She's sedated and recovering from surgery, Dr. Martinez explained. Mr. Cross, I have to ask about the stress factors in MS. Rodriguez's life. Preeclampsia this severe is often triggered by sustained emotional distress. Nathan felt the weight of guilt crushing down on him as he understood that his indecision and cowardice had literally endangered Elena's life and their child's survival. It's my fault, Nathan said quietly. The stress was caused by our complicated relationship situation. Dr. Martinez studied Nathan's face with the practiced assessment of someone who had seen family crises destroy lives. Mr. Cross, Ms. Rodriguez is going to need extensive support during her recovery. The baby will be in the NICU for several weeks, possibly months. Whatever complications exist in your relationship, They need to be resolved for the sake of both patients. I understand, Nathan said. Doctor, can I see my daughter? Son, Dr. Martinez corrected gently. You have a son. He weighs 2 pounds, 4 ounces, and he's fighting very hard to survive. Nathan followed Dr. Martinez to the NICU, where he saw his son for the first time through the clear walls of an incubator. The baby was tiny and fragile, connected to machines that monitored his every breath, but Nathan could see Elena's dark hair and his own nose in the child's features. He's beautiful, Nathan whispered, tears streaming down his face as he looked at the son whose life had been endangered by his father's cowardice. Premature babies are fighters, Dr. Martinez said encouragingly. With proper care and support, children born at 32 weeks often go on to live completely normal lives. Nathan stood beside his son's incubator, making a promise that was 8 months too late, but completely sincere. I'm going to choose you, he whispered to the sleeping baby. I'm going to choose your mother. I'm going to choose love over everything else, even if it costs me everything I've built. 2 hours later, Elena woke up in the recovery room to find Nathan sitting beside her bed, his eyes red from crying and his expensive suit wrinkled from sleeping in a hospital chair. How is he? Elena asked weakly, her first thoughts focused on their son rather than the man who had broken her heart. He's fighting, Nathan said gently, taking Elena's hand in his. Elena, he's beautiful and strong, just like his mother. Elena looked at Nathan, seeing genuine anguish and regret in his eyes. Nathan, what are you doing here? I'm here because you and our son are the most important things in my life, Nathan said firmly. Elena, I'm here because I finally found the courage to choose love over security. What about Charlotte? Elena asked, though her voice was weak from the surgery and medications. Charlotte filed for divorce 3 days ago, Nathan explained. The affair became public, the business is imploding, and I'm about to lose everything I spent 10 years building. I'm sorry, Elena said, meaning it despite everything Nathan had put her through. I'm not, Nathan replied, squeezing her hand gently. Elena, losing the business taught me something that I should have learned years ago. None of it matters without you. The money, the success, the social status. It's all meaningless if I don't have the woman I love to share it with. Elena studied Nathan's face, seeing something she hadn't seen in years, complete certainty about what he wanted. Nathan, you don't have to say things you don't mean because I'm in the hospital, Elena said carefully. I mean every word, Nathan said firmly. Elena, I've accepted a buyout offer from my board of directors. I'm stepping down as CEO and selling my majority stake in Cross Industries. Why would you do that? Elena asked in shock. Because I'd rather build something new with you than maintain something hollow without you, Nathan replied. Elena, I know I don't deserve another chance after everything I've put you through, but I'm asking for one anyway. Elena was quiet for a long moment, processing Nathan's words while machines monitored her recovery from the surgery that had saved her life and their son's. Nathan, I need to know that you're choosing us because you want to, not because you feel guilty about the complications, Elena said slowly. I'm choosing you because living without you isn't really living, Nathan said simply. Elena, I should have made this choice 6 months ago, or 3 years ago when we got divorced. I should have realized that love is the only thing worth building a life around. And if the business could be saved, Elena asked, if Charlotte was willing to work things out. It wouldn't matter, Nathan said without hesitation. Elena, I spent 10 years building an empire that felt empty because it didn't include the person I love most. I won't make that mistake again. Elena looked into Nathan's eyes and saw the same intensity that had captivated her in college, but tempered now with wisdom that came from loss and regret. Our son is going to be in the NICU for months, Elena said quietly. There will be medical bills, complications, stress that we can't avoid. Then we'll face it together, Nathan said. Elena, I know the timing is terrible and the circumstances are impossible, but I love you. I've loved you since we were 20 years old, and I'll love you until the day I die. Nathan, I can't go through losing you again, Elena said, tears beginning to flow. If you change your mind, if you decide that you miss your old life, I can't survive having my heart broken by you a third time. You won't have to, Nathan promised, bringing her hand to his lips. Elena, I'm done being afraid of choosing love over security. I'm done pretending that success means anything without the right person to share it with. Elena studied Nathan's face for a long moment, then made the choice that would determine both their futures. Okay, she said softly. Nathan, okay. We'll try again. Nathan felt relief and joy wash over him as he leaned down to kiss Elena gently, sealing a promise that had taken him too many years and too much heartbreak to make. I love you, Nathan whispered against her lips. Elena, I love you so much. I love you too, Elena replied, meaning it completely despite all the pain they had caused each other. 6 months later, Nathan Cross stood in the NICU holding his son Michael, who had just been cleared for discharge after 6 months of fighting for his life in the hospital. Elena sat beside them in a wheelchair, recovered from her surgery and glowing with happiness as they prepared to take their son home for the first time. He's gotten so big, Elena marveled, watching Nathan cradle their now healthy baby. Remember when he was so small we could barely see him through all the machines? He's a fighter, just like his mother, Nathan said, kissing Michael's forehead before carefully placing him in Elena's arms. Elena, are you ready to go home? More than ready, Elena replied, looking around the NICU that had been their second home for half a year. Nathan, I can't believe we're actually taking him home. Nathan pushed Elena's wheelchair toward the hospital exit, their son sleeping peacefully in her arms, both parents overwhelmed with gratitude for the miracle of their family's survival and reunion. The past 6 months had been the most challenging and rewarding of Nathan's life. He had sold his stake in Cross Industries for a fraction of what it had once been worth, using the money to pay Elena's medical bills and set up a modest trust fund for Michael's future. Charlotte had remarried within 4 months, choosing a finance executive who could provide the social status and security she valued most. Any regrets? Elena asked as they settled into Nathan's car, now a practical sedan rather than the luxury sports car he had driven during his CEO days. Only that it took me so long to make the right choice, Nathan replied, adjusting Michael's car seat before starting the engine. Elena, I've never been happier than I am right now. Even though you lost your company? Elena asked, studying his profile as he drove toward their modest apartment in Brooklyn. I didn't lose my company, Nathan corrected. I traded my company for my family. And Elena, it was the best deal I ever made. Elena smiled, understanding that Nathan had finally learned the lesson that had taken him 10 years to grasp, that love was the only investment that truly mattered, and that choosing the right person was worth any sacrifice. I love you, Elena said, reaching over to squeeze Nathan's hand as they drove toward their new life together. I love you too, Nathan replied. Both of you, more than I ever loved success or money or anything else I thought I wanted. As they pulled into the parking lot of their apartment building, Nathan reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. He had lost $1 billion empire, but gained the only thing that had ever truly mattered. A family built on love rather than convenience, passion rather than pragmatism. The affair that had threatened to destroy 3 lives had ultimately saved 2 hearts that had never stopped belonging to each other. Nathan had finally learned to choose love over security, and Elena had learned to forgive the man who had broken her heart twice before finding the courage to choose her completely. Michael stirred in his car seat as they parked, opening his dark eyes to look around at the world he was finally healthy enough to explore. Welcome home, son, Nathan said softly, unbuckling the car seat that held his greatest achievement. Welcome to the family that love built. If this story has shown you that it's never too late to choose love over fear, that second chances require the courage to make different choices, and that sometimes losing everything material is the only way to gain what truly matters, please share it with someone who needs to remember that the heart knows what the mind sometimes forgets. Subscribe to Lux Love Chronicles with Mr. Wentworth for more powerful stories about love that conquers fear, passion that transforms lives, and the courage to choose what matters most over what seems safest. Remember, the biggest risk in life isn't losing money or status or security. The biggest risk is losing the person who makes everything else meaningful. Until next time, choose love, choose courage, and never let fear talk you out of the happiness you deserve.